So we'll be discussing today the concept of complex frequency. What is a complex frequency? Any signal, any time domain signal can be represented in terms of complex frequency. Then what is this complex frequency? This complex frequency basically comprises of two terms. Okay, even though we say it's a complex frequency, it does not only involve frequency, but there is one more term which is associated with it, and we are going to study that and identify what is that term and what is its significance. Okay, so let us first of all understand that any time domain signal, okay, any signal xt, given any signal, may be voltage, may be current, right, any signal expressed in terms of a complex frequency as represented here. So I have a signal xt and I have represented that signal xt as xm into e raised to st. Okay, given a signal xt, let us say xt is voltage or xt is some current through the circuit. Okay, then any voltage or any current which is given to us can be expressed in a form which is in this way: xm into e raised to st. Then what is xm? Xm is the magnitude of that signal. So if I have a voltage or a current, then the first term that is shown here represents its magnitude, right? So the way we write voltage Vt is equal to Vm cos of omega t or Vm sin of omega t. So what is Vm or Im there? Vm and Im are indicating the magnitudes of the current or the voltage, right? Similarly, if I have a signal xt, if I generalize it, not talking very specific to voltage or current, if I generalize it for a signal xt, then the very first term here xm indicates the magnitude of the signal, right, into e raised to st, right? Now what is this s? Now this s is the complex term. This s plays very important role here, right? This s is a complex term. Now what is this complex term? This s is actually comprising of two terms. If you see, this s is actually expressed as sum of two terms. The first term is called sigma and the second is omega, which is called the angular frequency, right? The first term is called sigma, okay, and the second is the frequency. So this term s here is sum of two terms, sigma and j omega. So what does sigma do and what does omega inform us about this, why these two terms are involved here? So this sigma controls the magnitude of the signal, or indirectly let me say this sigma helps us to get the information about magnitude of the signal. Fine. This s, which is having two terms, sigma and j omega, this sigma term which is hidden in s helps us to get the magnitude information of the signal. And what is this omega which is hidden in s? This omega tells us about the frequency content of that signal, right? So whenever we are expressing a signal in the form of e raised to st, it means that we are talking about the magnitude and the frequencies of the signal. What is the magnitude and how is it a function of time? So you could see here that s is getting multiplied by t because the signal that we have taken is a function of time. What actually you mean by, friends, x of t, v of t, I of t, right, s of t, right? Whenever we say it as x of t, what is this t here? T is the parameter on which this signal depends. So T is independent parameter, X is the dependent parameter, right? This X depends on T. This X actually depends on T, right? So T is the independent parameter, X is the dependent parameter. So we indirectly say it as X is a function of time. Or putting it in simpler words, x varies with respect to time. As t changes, x changes. It means that when I have expressed x of t as xm into e raised to xt, the magnitude xm is a function of time. The frequency is a function of time. It means that both these quantities are function of time. They are somehow related to time. And that's why as time changes, there is going to be some changes in the sigma and omega. Right? They are going to change as time changes, and that's why we are taking S into ET. Now the thing remains is, why not am I multiplying xn directly with st? Why am I multiplying xn with e raised to st? Is it not the question to be thought of? Right? If I want a signal xm, right, which is having two terms sigma and j omega, as xm dependent on sigma and j omega, where sigma talks about the magnitude, omega tells me the frequencies in the signal, then why not directly multiply xm with sigma into j plus j omega? Why is there an exponential term? Okay, so we'll answer this question as we go ahead. Why is there an exponential term coming into picture when we express any signal in terms of complex frequencies? Okay, so right now what we understand here, that any signal, given any signal, we can express it in terms of complex frequency. What does complex frequency consist of? That complex frequency consists of two terms, sigma and j omega, where sigma, see as written here, where sigma controls the magnitude of the signal, right? Where sigma, this symbol is called sigma, which controls the magnitude of the signal, and omega, right, controls the, is called as a complex frequency, and which tells us about the frequencies of the signal, right, which controls the rotation of the signal. What do you mean by rotation of the signal? We'll go, as we go ahead into the depth, we'll understand. So this omega is called as the complex frequency. Okay, so let us understand more about the concept of complex frequency as we go ahead now. Now what we have just seen, that sigma, that this S can be expressed as sigma plus j omega. So what we have done here, as seen in the earlier equation, it is e raised to st. Now I have replaced this S by sigma plus j omega. So I am replacing this S as sigma plus j omega. So what do I get? E raised to sigma plus j omega into t. And that's what is shown here in this particular side. See what we have done? Instead of e raised to st, what we have done is we have replaced s by sigma plus j omega multiplied by t. Now this t is multiplied to each of the term inside. So it becomes e raised to sigma t plus e raised to j omega t. So instead of e raised to st, we have replaced this s. We have replaced s in the equation by the two terms sigma plus j omega. In the next step, what we will be doing is we'll be separating these terms. So now I have e raised to sigma t, now I have e raised to j omega t. Now I have separated these two terms. So why I have separated? So that I can now identify the real part and the imaginary part of it. I want to separate out from xt. I want to, because that's the reason why we have called it complex, is it not? There is a j term involved there, and that's why we are calling it a complex term. So if there is a complex term involved, we know that it will have a real part and it will have an imaginary part. So to separate out the real and imaginary part from these signals, I have separated these two terms, e raised to sigma t into e raised to j omega t, because e raised to sigma plus j omega t can be separated out as the product of the two terms e raised to sigma t into e raised to j omega t. Right? Now we will use the Euler's theorem. What is Euler's theorem? That e raised to I theta, any general e raised to I theta, can be expressed as cos theta plus I sin theta. Right? We know that according to Euler's theorem, e raised to I theta can be expressed as cos theta plus I sin theta. We can express it as cos theta plus I sin theta. Right? And therefore, I will now substitute. Now, where is the complex term? It is here. So, what is my theta? My theta is omega t. Instead of theta, here, if I compare these two equations, with respect to this equation, what is my theta here? My theta is omega t. So it is e raised to j theta, where theta here with respect to my example is omega t. So if I apply this equation to the term here, I get cos of omega t plus j sine of omega t. Right? So I have applied this Euler's identity. Right? I have applied this Euler's identity, right, to our equation, which is e raised to j omega t, where omega t, if I compare with e raised to I theta, I can say that theta is nothing but omega t. So I'll replace here theta by omega t. So what do I get? I get cos of omega t plus j sine of omega t. Correct? Now I'll multiply each of these terms inside. So I'll multiply xm e raised to sigma t to the first term. I'll multiply xm e raised to sigma t to the second term. So when I'll multiply, I will now have distinctly two terms. One is the complete real part where there is no j involved, and another is the term where there is j involved. So the term which is having no j term becomes the real part. So what is the real part here? Where there is no j involved, xm e raised to sigma t, if I multiply it to cos. So it becomes xm e raised to sigma t cos of omega t. This is the term where there is no j term involved, and that's why we call it to be the real part. Whereas when I multiply xm e raised to sigma t into j sine of omega t, there is a j involved in the product. Wherever there is j term, that term is called as a complex term. Right? So this is real part, this is complex part of the signal, and this complex part we have represented separately. So the real part is this, whereas the imaginary part is this xm e raised to sigma t sine of omega t. So where there is j term involved, we call it to be the imaginary part. So this is the real part and this is the imaginary part. So we have separated out the real part and the imaginary part from the complex signal. Okay, so now we are going to study whatever we have understood here, real part of xt and imaginary part of xt, right? Those two terms that which we have, we are going to analyze those two terms for various conditions. Now what are these conditions or cases that we are going to take? These cases are dependent on different values of s. These cases are dependent on different values of s. What do we have s? We have s as we have just discussed, we have s as sigma plus j omega, correct? So this is my s. S is sigma plus j omega, correct? This is my s. Now I am going to discuss this particular complex term by considering different cases on s. That's what I'm special cases for different values of s. Now what are those special cases? The first case could be when I will take omega to be 0. The first case will be when I'll take omega 0. So only there is sigma involved. When I take the first case when omega is 0, there is only sigma involved now. So s is only a function of sigma. I have made omega 0. So I'll analyze entire signal xt for this particular case when my omega is 0. Now I'll move on to the next case. What is my next case? My next case is when I'll take my sigma. I'll take sigma to be 0. Right? In the next case, I will take sigma to be 0. Correct? In the first case, I will take omega is equal to 0. In the next case, I will take omega to be 0. Right? And in the third case, I will take both omega and sigma to be 0. In the third case, both I will take to be 0. So this way, I am going to discuss entire complex signal by considering three different cases on S. First case I will discuss entire signal with omega making omega is equal to 0. In the second case I will discuss when I will make sigma is equal to 0. And in the third case I will make both of them 0, and then we will see what is the effect on xt. With these cases, what are we interested to observe? We are interested to observe what happens to the signal xt which we have expressed in a complex form. Is it not? We started with that. In the very first slide, what we started with? In the very first slide, we had started that we had represented a signal xt in the form of complex frequency. So if that signal is dependent on complex frequency, and if that signal is a function of sigma and j omega, what happens if I consider these cases? What is the effect on S, and indirectly how this S affects the signal xt is what we are going to analyze by making different cases. So let us start with the first case. What is the first case? The first case is when omega is equal to 0. Right, and sigma has certain value. So we are going to the first case when we have made omega is equal to 0, and so S is only a function of sigma now. S is only a function of sigma. So what happened to my signal xt? So what was my signal xt? So just if I go back to the previous slide, so look at my signal xt, real part and imaginary part. Everybody look at the real part and the imaginary part. So this is my real part, friends. This is my imaginary part. Correct? Now what happens to the real part? What happens to imaginary part when I am going to make sigma omega is equal to 0? So just think over this. When I'll put omega is equal to 0, what is going to happen to xt and what is going to happen to the real part xt and the imaginary part of xt? What changes will I observe in the real part of xt? What changes will I observe in the imaginary part of xt when I put omega is equal to 0? So if I put omega is equal to 0, what do I get here? Cos of 0. Cos of 0 becomes omega is 0. So 0 into t becomes 0. So it is cos of 0. Cos of 0 as we know is 1. Cos of 0 is 1. So real part reduces to only x of t is equal to xm e raised to sigma t. Right? There is only these two terms involved now. Cos of 0 becomes 1. This is my real part. This is my real part. So real part is now only having the terms xt is equal to xm e raised to sigma t when I put omega is equal to 0. Okay. Now look at the imaginary part. What happens to the imaginary part? What happens to the imaginary part? So when we put omega is equal to 0 here, sine of 0 is 0. So this term entirely becomes 0. Why? Because the moment when we put omega as 0 into this, sine of 0, as omega is 0, sine of 0 becomes 0. So as this term is 0, entire signal becomes 0. Entire signal becomes 0. It means that for the condition when we have taken omega is equal to 0, we have only the real part with the equation xt is equal to xm e raised to sigma t. Cos of 0 becomes 1, and that is what is shown here, friends. That is what is shown in the next slide. Okay. So look at this slide. Now we have put omega is equal to 0. Right? So if omega is 0, correct? I hope the slide is visible now. When we put omega is equal to 0, what has happened to S? So omega is 0. So S only reduces to sigma. S only reduces to sigma, and imaginary part becomes 0 because sine of omega t is 0. So x of t has only the real part now, out of which cos of 0 is 1. So this term is 1. Correct? This term is 1. What remained? What remained is only xt is equal to xm e raised to sigma t, the real part. Whereas the imaginary part is 0 because sine of omega t is 0. So imaginary part is 0. Okay. Now we have only signal xt, which was expressed in complex form, is now only having the term xm e raised to sigma t. So when omega is 0, xt is xm e raised to sigma t. Now we will analyze this real part which is having the equation xt is equal to xm e raised to sigma t, where xm, what is xm? Xm is the magnitude of xt, e raised to sigma t, where the sigma controls this magnitude. That is what we discussed in the first slide, that this sigma term controls the magnitude of this xt. Now how this sigma is controlling this magnitude is what we will analyze in the next case, where we will discuss these cases with different values of sigma. Okay, so friends, now we are in which case? We are in the case when we have taken omega is equal to 0, correct? So we have only sigma now. We have only sigma. So sigma can further take 3 values. So we will now analyze the same case but with taking different values of sigma. So we'll take the first case when sigma is less than 0. We will have a next case when sigma is greater than 0, and we will have the third case when sigma is equal to 0. Okay, so we are going to discuss these 3 cases now. So try to understand what is the first case we started. We started with the first case when we have taken omega is equal to 0. The moment we took omega is equal to 0, imaginary part was 0. Real part reduced to only this part xm into e raised to sigma t. Now to understand this equation, xt is equal to xm e raised to sigma t, where we have discussed that sigma controls the magnitude of xm. To understand this further, we will understand this equation by considering 3 cases of sigma. So we'll understand this equation by considering 3 cases of sigma. So when sigma is less than 0, what happens to xt? How is the xt? When sigma is greater than 0, what is your xt? And when sigma is equal to 0, what is xt? Okay, so let us discuss these 3 cases of sigma in this particular figure. So what is the first case now? The first case is sigma is greater than 0. Could see here, this is my first case when sigma is greater than 0. Right, what is my xt equation, friends? So xt, as just discussed, xt is equal to xm, correct? E raised to sigma t. This was what my xt was. Now what is the situation? The situation is that sigma is greater than 0. Now the situation is sigma is greater than 0. So just look at the exponential term here. There is an exponential term involved. Sigma is positive. Sigma greater than 0 means what? Sigma is a positive term. Sigma is some value which is positive. So when we have exponential term with positive power, how is the exponential curve? Definitely the exponential curve is exponentially increasing. Why? Why? Because you have exponential term with positive powers here. Sigma is greater than 0 indicates that sigma is having positive values. Sigma is a positive term. And if we consider t, for positive values of t, if I consider the curve, how is the exponential term with all positive powers? Definitely the exponential term is increasing with respect to time. As time increases, you could see here, as time increases, right, this base is time, right, as time increases, e raised to sigma t increases. So it is exponentially growing signal. Correct? And what happens to the next case now? The same equation, but now I am considering sigma less than 0. Sigma less than 0. Sigma less than 0, what it indicates? It indicates that when sigma is less than 0, that it takes negative values. Sigma is a negative value. Right? So negative value means what happens to the power here? So exponential term is a function of negative values of sigma. So if exponential term is negative values of sigma, it means that it is exponentially decreasing signal. Is it not? It is an exponentially decreasing signal. Right? What we observe is that when the exponential term is having sigma with sigma value less than 0, it means that it is e raised to minus of something into t. So it is exponential. Exponential function is the power of negative values of time. Right? It means that as time increases, the exponential term is going to decrease. Right? So this is the effect of sigma greater than 0. We get exponentially increasing. The signal xt that we expressed in complex signal becomes a signal which is exponentially growing with respect to time. Right? And when sigma is less than 0, it means that the function is a negative value of time. Exponential is a function of negative values, and that's why it is exponentially decreasing. And there's one more case as we just discussed, that sigma is equal to 0. Now we have the third case when sigma is equal to 0. So what happened when sigma is equal to 0? What happened to your signal xt? So now your xt signal, which was a function of xm e raised to sigma t. What happened to this particular signal? What happened when you put sigma as 0 there? When we put sigma as 0 into this, e raised to 0 becomes 1. Is it not? When we put sigma as 0, third case. Now I am talking about the third case when sigma is equal to 0. So when I put sigma is equal to 0, what happened to this exponential term? It became e raised to 0. When I put sigma as 0, it becomes e raised to 0. E raised to 0 is 1. So this term becomes 1. What we get is xm is equal to its magnitude xm. That means that this magnitude is, if suppose this magnitude is 5, or this magnitude is 3, or this magnitude is 2, it means that the signal xt continuously remains 2 or 5, whatever is the magnitude, for all the values of time. See, try to understand what is the meaning of this. If I say sigma is 0, this term becomes 1. Now we understand that this particular term becomes 1. So therefore, what do I get? Therefore, I get x of t to be simply equal to x of m. And what is x of m? X of m is certain magnitude. If I say x of m is 5, if I say the magnitude of x of m is 5, now this is 1. When I put sigma as 0, this term is 1. So if this term is 1, what leaves in xt? Xt is equal to xm as shown here. Xt is equal to xm. And now if I assume that the magnitude, the peak magnitude of the signal is 5. What is the meaning of this particular sentence? Xt is equal to 5. What is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is that for all the values of time t, x of t remains 5. What is the meaning of this line? If I say my xm is 5, the value of magnitude is 5, then xt is equal to 5. What is the meaning of this? Xt is equal to 5. It means that for all the values of time t, the magnitude remains constant at 5. How do I plot such a signal? So the plot is shown here. So you could see here, if I say my xm value is 5, for all the values of time t, the signal xt remains at 5. So what is this, friends? It's a constant signal. And what do we call a constant magnitude signal? A DC signal. Is it not? It's a DC giving me a constant 5 volts. It's a DC signal, right? It's a DC signal, right? We call it, because DC signal is what? DC signal is a signal which gives us constant voltage. Is it not? So here we can have a constant voltage, constant current, we could say, coming from circuit, right? So this is a DC. It's a DC circuit. Okay, DC value. So let us quickly revise what we learned. So all the three cases we have shown here. So all this we started with. So let us go back. What we started with? We started with omega is equal to 0 as the first case. So with omega is equal to 0, we understood that xt is a function of xm e raised to sigma t. Only this, xm is equal to e raised to sigma t with omega is equal to 0. Now to understand this better, further what we did? We took three cases of sigma. We took sigma greater than 0, then we took sigma less than 0, and then we took sigma equal to 0, correct? So we analyzed this case, right, with the basic case that when sigma is equal to 0, we understood this, what is the effect of sigma is equal to 0 by considering omega is equal to 0 with three cases of sigma, sigma greater than 0, sigma less than 0, sigma equal to 0. So what happened when sigma was greater than 0? We got an exponentially increasing curve. Is it not? So this was the case. Exponentially increasing curve is the case when sigma is greater than 0. Then we got exponentially decreasing curve. We got one more output when we had shown we had exponentially decreasing value. So this was the value when sigma was less than 0, correct? And then we got the third case, right? We got a steady state curve, this one, steady state value. And this was the output when we had taken sigma is equal to 0. Right? So now I am going to tell you a very important characteristics of sigma. What is sigma also called as? Sigma is also called as attenuation. Okay, it's an attenuation constant. Sigma is also called as attenuation constant. This is very important thing, right? Sigma is also called as attenuation constant, right? Why is it called attenuation? And what was sigma that we initially considered at the start? What was sigma? What was sigma doing? Sigma was controlling the magnitude. Is this not what I told you at the start? That sigma controls the magnitude of the signal. Sigma controls the magnitude of the signal, and that is what is seen here, friends, from the curve. That sigma is changing the magnitude. So for different cases of sigma, we have seen different magnitudes of the signal xt. When sigma was greater than 0, we got exponentially increasing curve. When sigma was less than 0, we got exponentially decreasing curve. When sigma is equal to 0, we got a steady state curve. So is it not that sigma is controlling the magnitude? Yes, sigma is affecting the magnitude of your signal xt. And the other name to sigma is attenuation constant. So when sigma is greater than 0, right? When sigma is greater than 0, what is the meaning of this? When sigma is greater less equal to 0, what is the meaning of this? And when sigma is less than 0, what is the meaning of this? Right? So it is called as the attenuation constant because it controls the attenuation. Right? When sigma is equal to 0, right, there is as if there is no attenuation on the signal, and the signal is, having a value which is remaining steady. When sigma is less than 0, right, here we get a negative value, and because of which we get exponentially decreasing curve. And when sigma is greater than 0, we get a positive term in the exponential, and we get an exponentially increasing curve. And that's why it is controlling the attenuation of the signal. It controls the attenuation on xm. Right? So when sigma is greater than 0, there is no attenuation on the signal xm, and that's why xm is continuously increasing with respect to time. When sigma is less than 0, there is a attenuation that affects the signal xm, and that's why xm has a magnitude which decreases with respect to time. And when sigma is equal to 0, no existence of sigma, xm remains as it is. No attenuation affecting xm. So xm remains as it is. So this is the first case that we discussed when omega was 0. Now let us move to case number 2. Right? Now we will discuss case number 2. And what is case number 2? Case number 2 is when we are going to take sigma is equal to 0, friends. So in the first case we discussed omega is equal to 0. Now we are going to take the next case when sigma is 0. Therefore, S which was sigma plus j omega. What happened to sigma plus j omega? Now sigma is 0. So S is only a function of j and omega. So sigma S is a function of only j omega. Earlier S was function of only sigma when omega was 0. Now when sigma is 0, S is a function of j omega. So what happened to the real parts and what happened to the imaginary part? So what was the real part? If we recall, the real part was xt is equal to xm e raised to sigma t cos of omega t. Is it not? This was the equation. Xn is equal to xm is equal x of t is equal to xm into e raised to sigma t cos of omega t. Now sigma is 0, so e raised to 0 becomes 1, and that's why x of t is simply xm cos of omega t. Similarly, what happened to imaginary part? Imaginary part was also having the term xm e raised to sigma t into sine of omega t. As sigma is 0, so imaginary part is xm sine of omega t. Okay, so now we have real part, which is this xm cos of omega t. Now we have an imaginary part, which is this xm sine of omega t. So with sigma is equal to 0, we have a real part which is a function of cos. We have an imaginary part which is a function of sine, right? So how do I plot this particular signal? So this plot is shown here, right? So this is your signal xt. So for your real parts, you could see here you get a cos sign, and for imaginary parts you get a sine term, right? So for imaginary parts you are obtaining a sine function, and for real parts you are obtaining a cos function, and this rotating vector is the omega vector. So as your omega rotates, you get the cos and the sine function. So this rotating function is the omega function. So as omega changes, you get your cos and sine waveforms accordingly. Okay, so this is what is your next case when we consider sigma is equal to 0, and these are your cos and sine terms. Okay, now we will move to case number 3. What is the case number 3 now? When both sigma and omega, okay, third case is when both sigma and omega exist. Okay, third case is both sigma and omega both exist. Both are non-zero. That is the meaning of the third case. Both are non-zero. Both exist. Both are existing together in the signal. Neither of them is zero. Correct? So what happened here? E raised to sigma t cos of omega t, both the terms are present in the real part. Xm e raised to sigma t sine of omega t, both sigma as well as omega terms are present. So this is the real part which we had obtained as it is, and this is the imaginary part which we had obtained remains as it is, because both sigma and omega are intact now. Neither of them are zero. Right? So now we will discuss the case 3 when we get both imaginary part as well as real part having both the terms, both the functions sigma and omega. Right. Now we will discuss this case number 3 further with two cases. We will discuss case number 3 with two cases. There can be further two cases because we want to analyze the effect of sigma. So we will discuss this effect when we will take sigma less than 0, and we will discuss this case when sigma is greater than 0. So we are going to discuss this case number 3 where both sigma as well as omega exist. To understand this case, we will further take this sigma. Okay, we'll further take this sigma and put it for two cases. We will discuss it for two cases when sigma is less than 0 and when sigma is greater than 0. What is the effect on the real part and on the imaginary parts for these cases is what we will analyze. So we'll take the first case now. We'll take the case when sigma is greater than 0. Right? So this is our real part, this is our imaginary part. So when sigma is greater than 0, right? So e raised to, what is the meaning of sigma greater than 0? The meaning of sigma greater than 0 indicate that sigma is taking all positive values. Sigma take all positive values. So when sigma take positive values, we have exponential term which is positive. We have exponential term which is function of positive term, and that's why this exponential term, what happens to this exponential term? This exponential term is exponentially increasing now. As sigma is positive, we have a curve, we have e raised to sigma t which is exponentially increasing, right? Which here also we have the same, we have exponential term which is exponentially increasing with respect to time. And if you multiply such an exponential term to a cos term or to a sine term, what happens to the sinusoidal waveform? They will keep on increasing in magnitude, is it not? Because you are multiplying this cosine or sine wave to an exponential term which is increasing with magnitude, right? So instead of remaining as a steady sine wave, what, or a steady cosine wave, what happens to these waves? As you see, these waves are continuously increasing in magnitude. Why? Because it is getting multiplied with an exponential term which is continuously increasing in magnitude. So this exponential term which is continuously increasing in magnitude with respect to time changes the magnitude of the cosine term, and you get a signal xt wherein the signal is continuously increasing with respect to, so these sine waves will go on, these cosine and sine waves, right, both of these waves will continuously keep on increasing with respect to time. How do I identify cos and how do I identify sine? So you could always remember cosine. How do you remember cosine wave? Cosine wave is when cos is, when there is a 0, cosine term is maximum. Remember, cos of 0 is 1. So you get a maximum magnitude here. So how do you identify a cosine wave and a sine wave? So at 0, if the signal has a peak magnitude, it is a cosine wave. And at 0, if I put a 0, cos of 0 is 0. So at 0, if the magnitude is 0, it is always a sine wave. Remember, at 0, if it is at a peak value, it is a cosine wave. At 0, if the signal is 0, it's a sine wave. So this is the cosine wave which is continuously increasing in magnitude because you are multiplying it with an exponential term which is increasing in magnitude. Similarly, you have a sine term which is continuously increasing in magnitude because you have multiplied it with an exponential term which is increasing in magnitude. So this is the effect on the real part and the imaginary part when we have taken sigma greater than 0. Now we'll move to the next case when sigma is less than 0. So when sigma is less than 0, what is the effect of it on the real part and the imaginary part of the complex signal xt? So we know that when sigma is less than 0, it means that we are talking about sigma. Which values of sigma? We are talking about sigma which are negative values of sigma. Is it not? So when sigma is negative, what happens to this term? What happens to the exponential term? If sigma is negative, it means that we have a curve, we have an exponential curve which is continuously decreasing with respect to time, right? We have e raised to sigma t which is continuously decreasing in time, exponentially decreasing with respect to time, right? So now you are multiplying such an exponentially decreasing signal with a cosine and a sine wave will result in a signal whose magnitude keep on reducing with respect to time. So as you see here, the cosine wave is continuously decreasing with its magnitude is continuously decreasing with respect to time. Similarly, the sine wave also has the same effect, that it is continuously decreasing with respect to time, right? So the effect of this sigma when the sigma is having values less than 0 will have an imaginary part and the real part wherein the magnitudes are continuously decreasing with respect to time. The reason behind is you are multiplying those cosine and sine waves with the exponential term, right, where the attenuation on the signal is such that the signal is continuously decreasing with respect to time, and that's why the cosine and the sine wave are also decreasing in magnitude with respect to time. So this is the effect of sigma, that is complex frequency, on the real part and the imaginary part for different cases of sigma when we consider sigma less than 0, when we consider sigma greater than 0. Right? So summarizing all the entire discussion, so here is what we understand. Right? The entire discussion is we have put that sigma. This is S plane, friends. What I have put forward to you is called as the S plane. Why is it called as the S plane? Because I am considering both the parameters of S which are involved. What were the parameters of S that we just discussed? We had S as sigma plus j omega, is it not? We had this. So now this plot, if you observe this plot, this x and y axis, what is the x axis? X axis is sigma, okay, which controls the magnitude of the signal, and omega which tells us about the frequencies in the signal, right? So this is the j omega axis. So it's a plot of sigma j omega versus sigma. It's a plot of j omega versus sigma, and that's the reason we call it as the S plane, right? And whatever cases we discussed, right, all those cases have been put forward here in a single graph in the S plane. So when we talk about this particular line, when we are on the x-axis, right, here this is a sigma axis where omega is 0. So when omega is 0, right, this is when we are on the sigma axis, when omega is 0, right, then depending on the sigma values, you had either a growing exponential signal or a decreasing exponential. So positive values of sigma resulted into growing sinusoids, and negative values of sigma, you could say you obtained a decaying sinusoids, is it not? So, and when we are on the j omega axis, it means that sigma is 0. So, when sigma is 0, what you get? You get a DC component, is it not? When sigma is 0, right, you get on the j omega axis, definitely sigma will be 0. On when sigma is 0, what you get is the DC component, right? When sigma is 0, you get a DC component. So, all these cases have been put together onto a single plane, which is called as the S plane. So this is all about understanding the complex frequencies. Okay, this is all about understanding the complex frequencies. So summarizing the discussion here, any signal, given any signal, you can express that signal as in a complex form, and that complex form has a representation of sigma and a complex frequency omega, where sigma is the term that controls the magnitude of the signal and omega is telling you about the angular frequencies in the signal. Okay, so this is all about the concept of complex frequencies. Okay, so in the next lecture, friends, we will discuss more about the use of complex frequencies to analyze the two-port networks. Okay, so we are going to analyze the two-port networks using this concept of complex frequency. Okay, so in the next lecture, we'll go more into the depth of it. So I hope you have understood today the concept of the complex frequencies. Okay.